Thanks for listening to Goddab Radio, a podcast for progressive thinking people. I'm Mad Dog Manser, and I'm here to bring you relevant and honest news and information I find compelling. We cover politics, debunk conspiracy theories, report on cannabis, especially in Oregon, and feature guest interviews regularly. At Goddab Radio, we are ferociously progressive, fiercely skeptical, and forcefully scientific with a no-nonsense attitude. Today is Friday, April 14th, and today we're going to have a good show for you. In our conspiracy hypotheses segment this week, we're going to take a general look at fallacies. We're not going to actually be debunking anything specifically, but we are going to look at specifically an article written by Carl Sagan. It's an essay that he put in his book, The Demon-Haunted World, and the essay is called The Fine Art of Baloney Detection. I think you're going to get a real kick out of that, and we're going to go through some of the fallacies that some of the poor arguments that are often made, and basically we're going to explain what to kind of look for. And also, of course, we got our Carnival Barks segment where we're going to cover just more stupid Trump bullshit from the week. His bombing of Syria, which was a joke, really, and then the Moab that he dropped in Afghanistan, which was alarming. His defunding of Planned Parenthood, I mean, really just kind of ridiculous on its face. And then also, of course, we got Spicy and his Holocaust comments during Passover, just ridiculous. So we're gonna it's another doozy this week from Trump administration. We have a little bit of cannabis news, actually covering some stuff happening in Colorado and Tennessee. Nothing actually in Oregon for this week. But most importantly, in the second half, we're going to have a chat with Jacob Bureros. Jacob is the leader, I guess you might say, of the Direct Action Alliance. He's the founder of the organization, and we're going to find out what they've been doing in the second half of the show. So stick around for that. And we want to thank, of course, as usual, our sponsors for helping make Goddab Radio possible. Honey Badger Sungrown and Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper. And we want to give a special thanks to Eric Sky for allowing us to use his amazing song, One for the Green, to open and close our show. We really appreciate that. So to get started, we're gonna mention here and chat about Carl Sagan specifically. Carl Sagan, absolutely amazing scientist. He died a few years ago, of course, which was pretty sad. He was not a very elderly man. One great thing about Carl, and a lot of people don't realize, is that his wife, Anne, I think her name is, she serves on the board of NORML, believe it or not. Yeah, that is right. His wife, the wife of Carl Sagan, serves on the board of NORML. Her name is Anne Druyan. Anyway, that's one of the great things, I think. So this book is called The Demon-Haunted World that Carl Sagan wrote. And it's centered around scientific skepticism. It was actually the second to last book that he wrote before his death. And one of the essays in the book is titled The Fine Art of Baloney Detection. And in this essay, he basically gives advice for devising conclusions as well as advice for avoiding logical and rhetorical fallacies. I mean, it's something I have not read, and I am really intrigued by this. So now that I found out about it, I'm going to be picking up a copy of this to read it. Together, what he does in the book apparently is he sets up warning signs for common fallacies, and he calls this detection set of warning signs baloney detection kit. His baloney detection kit, and he categorizes illogical and rhetorical fallacies. sort of in a way that we're going to cover now. Now, it's probably 2-3 dozen of them that he actually categorizes. We're only going to cover a few on our show. First and foremost is, of course, the most common, even though this is, I think, an alphabetical sort of list of them, is the ad hominem argument that almost everybody inevitably, unless you're really, really good at debating, pulls out and uses on occasion, even myself. And it's basically attacking the messenger. A classic example is given here in the Rational Wiki. They say the secular geologist can't hear or see the message about creationism because of their academic indoctrination in anti-biblical, naturalistic, uniformitarian assumptions. The reason that most Christian geologists can't see it is the same, plus the fact that they have believed the scientific establishment more than the Bible that they have claimed to believe is the inspired, inerrant Word of God. This doesn't say anything about the argument of creationism, but rather about the scientist, right? He's saying that the scientists can't understand it because they don't believe in God. So therefore, ad hominem argument all the way. It attacks the messenger and not the message itself. And that's pretty common when you I actually got accused of leading off my statement with an ad hominem argument on Facebook because I posted that people who believe in chemtrails are conspiracy theorists. And the guy took offense to the fact that I was saying that if you believed in that was an ad hominem attack. And I guess if you really want to break it down, you could say that. But I back up what I say, and it's a conspiracy theory. Heretofore, if you believe in chemtrails, then you, by definition, are a conspiracy theorist because you believe it. It's that simple. So, but anyway, so maybe I'll just leave that out and say, and break it down, and then at the very end explain. So, if you believe this, then you're a conspiracy theorist. I don't know. Another classic one is the appeal to ignorance. If something is not known to be false, then it must be true, right? Heck, Spicy and others have done this with the wiretapping of Trump Tower, right? I mean, he has sat there and said, well, he wasn't wiretapping Trump himself, but there's other kinds of surveillance. I mean, they're actually looking for a reason to explain why they made the stupid statements that he made. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Another appeal to ignorance is a classic one that we're seeing now in the cannabis industry. In Oregon specifically, is people saying that pesticides in cannabis, I don't think they hurt you because we smoke it and it combusts it. And besides, here's the argument. We've been smoking this cannabis for 30 years and I have had no problems from smoking it, right? As if they understand what the pesticides are doing to their body, and they've got these other ailments possibly that they've got that could have been caused by the pesticide. They don't know, but they're just assuming. They're assuming that the pesticides haven't done anything. They're just appealing to ignorance. I mean, it's just classic. Another classic one is begging the question, or circular logic, or circular thinking, or circular reasoning, I guess it is. And this happens, of course, all over the place. All over the place. And the most classic one you see that I've seen myself, and I hear it all the time, is the World Trade Center. The people who are conspiracy theorists and believe that the World Trade Center collapse was caused by a demolition because of the way it collapsed is because they can't believe that a building could fall like that. The only possible way that it could fall like that is if it was demolished. And that's just exactly what they're doing. I mean, it's circular logic. You can't do that. There's also, what if there's a big raise in the minimum wage? One of the classic arguments against that is that it's going to make all the prices go up, and it's going to make people lose their jobs, right? Except every time there's been a minimum wage increase in this country, that's never happened, especially if it's done sort of gradually. And you do it every 6 or 9 months, and then in 3 years you've raised it by $3. People don't lose their jobs. Prices do not substantially go up. It's just a total lie. And it's begging the question, circular logic. They're just assuming it's going to happen. Here's another one, observational selection. This is a classic one that it just annoys me. Looking at only positive evidence while ignoring the negative. And unfortunately, some of the people that are most guilty of doing this of all are marijuana activists, medical marijuana people who make false claims or ignore the negative impacts that cannabis can have, ignoring the fact that smoking it puts a bunch of tar into your lungs, and it's not good for your lungs, and ignoring negative impacts from cannabis. I see it all the time. I don't think you can just ignore these things. They're real. These impacts can be real. Cannabis hyperemesis is a recent article in the Oregon Cannabis Connection dealing with overdosing on cannabis to a point where some people actually get nauseated and throw up and need a hot shower and don't feel good because they've taken too much cannabis, or they've been chronically taking too much cannabis, and it makes them feel sick. And they're not sure exactly what's causing this, but people deny that it could even possibly happen because they don't believe any of the negative evidence about cannabis. And I'm sorry, it's a miraculous drug, but there are negative effects from cannabis. I'm sorry. If you think there are no negative effects from cannabis, then you're buying into this bullshit, and you are, as far as I'm concerned, a conspiracy theorist, along with all those other wacky cannabis people. So there you go. The statistics of small numbers. There's another one for you that it's actually one of my pet peeves. Having the realization a few years ago that statistics really control everything about your world. I mean, it's just amazing. Everything. One of the things that is really annoying is when they use small numbers to show a significant increase in something. One of the classic things that I've seen lately is, again, in the cannabis industry, claiming in Colorado that there has been a 300% increase in hospitalization of children from cannabis. Okay, that was actually true. But the problem was the number of children went from, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it was something really low, like it went from 10 to 30. And remember, none of these kids died. Okay, this wasn't like they were getting killed or anything. They just had a bad experience, and they were okay in 48 hours. But you can't make the claim that there's a 300% increase in overdoses based on that. And people do this all the time. In statistics, you need a large random sample for it to mean anything, generally, when we're talking about probabilities. So, or these kinds of statistical results. It's just crazy. And there's unfortunately, this is also used to argue against other drugs because there's an incidence where a drug can kill you. If a pharmaceutical drug that's prescribed to, say, control your diabetes could potentially kill you, and they have to tell you that it may potentially kill you. But the truth is that out of the 10,500 people who took this drug in the phase 2 study, again, I'm just pulling these numbers out of thin air just because to give you an example of what we're looking at, 10,000 some odd people in this study, 10 may have died. I mean, that's a very, very low number. If, in fact, this drug extends your life for 5 years without it. I mean, right? So if you live 5 years longer if you take this drug, but there's a 0.1% chance that it could kill you. What are you going to do? You're going to take the drug. And for somebody to say, oh, it may kill you, it's bad for you, it's a terrible drug, or to make that argument based on that one mention in the commercial on TV or whatever it might be. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Okay, you just can't, in my opinion, you can't make that assumption. You can't use those small statistics. It just doesn't work. Non sequitur, there's another one for you. Non sequitur does not follow is what that means in Latin. There's a whole bunch of examples of non sequitur. Here's an example they give in Rational Wiki. Living specimens of orders of animals that were believed to have been extinct for millions of years have been found before, such as the diatomidae squirrel, the wooleme pine, and the coelacanth, which I guess is a type of fish. And therefore, dinosaurs coexisted with humans. The no longer existence of the fact that the pine trees no longer exist, squirrels no longer exist, and fish no longer exist, but then they find them years later, has no bearing on whether dinosaurs still exist. You see, they're not related. Just the fact that we have, this is used a lot too. You hear this a lot from conservatives, okay? And it's really tough when people make that kind of argument that, oh, well, see, it happened over here, therefore it can happen over here. Well, dinosaurs are not the same as trees and squirrels and fish, okay? They're just not. Dinosaurs are totally unique because they're cold-blooded. Come on, man, it's just not the same. So non sequitur, another classic. And then I'm going to skip right down here to the false dichotomy, no in between. And the great example they give you is either you're with us or you're with the terrorists. Classic quote from George W. Bush. No, that's really not true, W. Because I sure as hell wasn't with that son of a bitch or ever going into Iraq. And I sure as hell was not with the terrorists. So no, you're damn wrong, George W. Bush. So that's the false dichotomy. If you can remember that. Excluded middle. That's another way of looking at it. Portraying an issue or argument as having only two options and no spectrum in between. And then there's others. Slippery slope, of course. A terrible argument to make. Short-term versus long-term, assuming a current trend has remained constant throughout its history and will continue to do so in the future, even though no such evidence exists, an extrapolation is justified. It's great. Weasel words, it's a great one. The use of vague, non-specific references. So there you go. There's, Donald Trump does that all the time. Some say, right, it has been suggested. It is widely thought. Right. That is that's a Republican specialty, I must say. Yeah. All right. Enough on that. So check this book out if you're interested in breaking up people's arguments that are out on the fringe and saying stupid things, and the fine art of baloney detection. Carl Sagan in his book, The Demon Haunted World. Excellent. All right. It's time for Carnival Barks, our weekly Trump Roundup, where we highlight recent alternative facts from the so-called president, a segment where we point out the absurdities, lies, and blunders coming from Trump and his inept administration. Oh yeah, and I gotta say, Trump was just a real piece of work this week. Trump's back at the healthcare repeal and replace bullshit again. This so-called President Trump threatened to withhold subsidies under the Affordable Care Act. Really? Let's just hurt people to make the Democrats do what I want. What the fuck? What kind of creep does that? The ACA is bad enough without his meddling, I must say. Michael Marchand, spokesman for the Washington Health Benefit Exchange, told King 5 News, it's bad for customers, it's bad for our state, because it has the potential to destabilize our individual health insurance market. That could be for the rest of this year and for years to come. The problem is that causes a bunch of uncertainty. And if the subsidies are not funded by the government, industry insiders worry premiums could spike, or even worse, insurers could pull out of the state marketplace. Quote, you have the president making statements like this that only heighten uncertainty in the market, unquote. Washington State Insurance Commissioner Mike Creedler said, quote, you're playing with people's lives here, unquote. Trump had better let others handle health care. I tell you what, it's over his head. It's way over his head. He has no idea what the hell's involved. He admitted that basically right after he took office. Who knew it was such a complicated thing, right? Remember Trump saying that? What a piece of crap. Okay, and then yesterday, on Thursday, April 13th, he dropped the mother of all bombs, is nicknamed, on Afghanistan the first time this bomb has ever been used. It's only a 15-year-old device. They devised it in like 2003. It's actually called a MOAB, M-O-A-B, and it's short for Massive Ordnance Air Blast Weapon, better known as the mother of all bombs. Basically the biggest conventional bomb ever made, and it has never been used. Yet Trump, again, he's talking to the press in a little meeting in his conference room in the West Wing, and breaks down after a reporter asks about whether he authorized the use of the weapon, which he didn't say he did or not. He called it my military. He bragged it was my military being authorized to do what's needed. And he'd never admitted to whether he authorized its use. He actually initially denied he specifically authorized it, basically. Just crazy. Oh, and that leads us to of course, next big thing, which is North Korea. I mean, we've seen with his bombing of Syria what's going on in his head. He's going to act out if anything weird happens, whether it affects us or not, after being this nationalistic, make America great again, the president of America, not the world. Apparently, he thinks he's got the authority to go bomb Syria, but he let him know ahead of time to evacuate the airbase. And then he finds out after talking with President of China that North Korea is not so damn easy. Oh, go figure. North Korea is not easy. And guess what? China doesn't have the control over North Korea that you thought. All they do is sell him weapons and give him a little bit of assistance. They don't have control over that wacko. Out of his freaking mind. Oh, and then, of course, the other thing he did just late this week, he signed a law that is aimed at cutting off Planned Parenthood funding. Yeah, that's right. You heard me right. Cut Planned Parenthood funding off. Just quite amazing, if you ask me. The measure nullifies a rule that was completed in the last days of the Obama administration. It effectively barred state and local governments from withholding federal funding for family planning services related to contraception, sexually transmitted infections, fertility, pregnancy care, and breast and cervical cancer screenings from qualified health providers, regardless of whether they also performed abortions. The new measure cleared Congress last month from Vice President Mike Pence casting the tie-breaking vote in the Senate, of course. It's something actually that was made possible back in 1996 by then Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich to fight against then the Democrats, where they decided that the new president comes in, he can easily just nullify any law that's been put in place in the last 6 months of the previous administration. Yeah, that's right. So I think they only have 60 days to do it, but this was done within that 60-day period. It just finally hit his desk to be signed. You know, he's shown ambivalence for Planned Parenthood, and he supports all the other services, but not their abortion services, which of course is like 1 or 2% of what they do or something. Really small, 3% maybe. Almost everything Planned Parenthood does is about things other than abortion, of course. Anyway, so that's happening. Planned Parenthood, which is the biggest women's health organization in the nation, helping women is about to get their funding cut, which is just going to decimate Planned Parenthood, of course. So just a bunch of pieces of crap there, doing stuff to women and their health care. Republicans meddling in people's lives, keep government out of your life. Unless of course you're a Republican doing that crap. Yeah, no kidding. All right. So, this last little rant here about Trump is going to lead us into the cannabis section too, because it's kind of because of Trump that this is happening in Colorado. Lawmakers yesterday, on Thursday, backed off plans to become the first U.S. state to regulate marijuana clubs, saying approval of Amsterdam-style pot clubs could invite a federal crackdown. Quote, given the uncertainty in Washington, this is not the time to be trying to carve off new turf and expand markets and make dramatic statements about marijuana, unquote. Governor Hickenlooper told the Denver Post last month. The Colorado Pot Club measure was aimed to remove club regulations, with the remaining bits of the proposal relatively minor. It could yet face more changes before a final vote. So they're not adding any other regulations, basically. Quote, I'd like to see a club bill that goes much further and that does a lot more, but in a year with Jeff Sessions, a small first step is better than no step at all, unquote. Democratic Representative Jonathan Singer said. Not everyone agreed with backing down on the statewide law, saying Colorado is wimping out. Quote, it only makes sense to allow people to have a place where they can smoke marijuana where it's controlled and confined, said Republican Tim Neville, who sponsored a separate club bill that failed because it would have allowed clubs to sell marijuana to people who wanted to smoke. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? Oh, gosh, I just tell you. Yeah. Tennessee, this is crazy. This is another. This is not because of Trump. This is just stupid Republicans. I'm sorry. Tennessee Republicans end marijuana decriminalization in Memphis and Nashville. Rollback is yet another sign the Republicans are hypocrites. Last fall, the cities of Nashville and Memphis were lauded by criminal justice reform activists for their local ordinances that allowed local authorities to reduce penalties for marijuana possession. Unfortunately, the scared and ignorant conservative Republicans in Tennessee and their equally dense governor decided it was a bad idea. Governor Bill Haslam signed a bill Wednesday, April 12th, that put an end to the practice, just 7 months after the policies were adopted by the cities. The bill absolutely flew through the legislature in March, sponsored by House Criminal Justice Committee Chairman William Lamberth, Republican, and Senator Jack Johnson, Republican. Only Democrats opposed the bill, but they have a minority in the legislature, of course. The spineless governor signed the bill saying he was deferring to the will of the legislature. This rollback of common sense passed in these cities is just another example of the problem with conservatives, or Republicans, if you will. In fact, we will call conservatives Republicans from now on, because that is who the big R party represents. If you are not a hardline conservative and are in the Republican Party still, newsflash, your party has been co-opted by radical idiots that have no ability to think or govern. You might want to do a little housekeeping. You see, conservatives want to keep government out of their own lives, but when it comes to the lives of others, they want the government to interfere and be the morality police. They actually believe that they are morally superior to liberals, typically, and even though they want the government to stay away from their money, their property, and their churches, they have no problem with government getting up in your personal life if they think you need a lesson in morality concerning your sex life or your civil liberties or your church if you're a Muslim. Republicans believe in less government when they speak words, but when they take action, they come down far from that principle. In fact, they do the opposite when it comes to civil liberties. They are more concerned about gay marriage and bathroom laws than the chance we could be drawn into another war. They are more concerned about destroying ISIS and increasing our military spending than they are about rebuilding America's infrastructure. And they're more concerned about gun rights for the insane than the right to smoke a doobie in your own home. If you're a Republican, you should be ashamed and mortified that your party has become so pathetic and full of shit that is now completely out of touch and smells exactly like a dirty diaper. Your party is taken over by an autocrat and your party is licking his shoes. And this is going to make America great again? A nation with a crumbling infrastructure, a dumbed-down citizenry, and a leader that is a petulant buffoon? I don't think so. And no one that can actually think doesn't buy that pile of crap or what he said. All right, let's move on to our interview with Jacob. We're glad to have him on the show, so we'll move right into that. Oh, actually, first, of course, a word from our sponsors. Are you interested in cannabis? Do you work in the industry? If so, you should pick up a copy of the Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper, available at over 380 locations across Oregon. We cover cannabis news and provide solid information on cannabis in Oregon and nationwide. Find us online at www.occnewspaper.com or pick up a copy at one of our distribution locations. We offer an interactive map on our website for your convenience. Oregon Cannabis Connection, connecting the cannabis community in Oregon since 2010. At Honey Badger Sun-Grown, they care about providing natural products. There are no chemical pesticides and no chemical fertilizers used in their cannabis grow, and they are motivated with a passion for natural cultivation. They take pride in sustainable and environmentally friendly cultivation and produce their product on the beautiful Willamette Valley floor. Honey Badger Cannabis is available at a number of dispensaries, including Grow High Station in Portland and Stash Cannabis Company in Beaverton. Ask for Honey Badger Sun-Grown products at your dispensary. You can visit them online at www.honeybadgersungrown.com. All right, welcome back to part 2 of Goddab Radio here, Friday, April 14th, and we'll go to our interview with Jacob Buderos of Direct Action Alliance. All right, so everybody, welcome to the show. Jacob Buderos with Direct Action Alliance. Jacob, we've had on the show before, talking about a bunch of different things that happen down here in Portland and vicinity. And this week, we're going to be talking with him about what's been going on for the past month or so. And I guess really it's been just a couple of things that you guys have been focused on. There's been some Trump rallies where I know you guys have shown up and protested against, basically. They've been like pro-Trump rallies that have had, I think the one I saw probably had a couple of hundred people, was about the most they've had. Yeah. And you guys showed up with basically a force as bigger to protest against. That's been great. But of course, because we don't like Trump on our show, obviously. After listening to Carnival Barks earlier in our show, everybody knows that I'm not a Trump lover by any means. So, but they've also had some issues. We've been having some issues with immigration. Yes. Specifically, it affected us recently here in Portland. So tell us a little about backstory on what happened recently, and then what's been going on.
So there's a couple of big stories in the Portland area, actually, in regards to immigration. The main one being that there was a young woman from Iran whose name was Aaliyah, and she was detained by ICE at the airport, and they were planning to deport her the very next day. And what happened with that was ICE actually did some things that were really out of the ordinary. One of them was take Aaliyah to a local jail out in the Dalles. and they kept her there overnight. And then the next day, they brought her up to the detention facility in Tacoma, Washington. And the story with that is actually that ICE decided after she had all of her papers, she was legal, everything was fine, she had her visa, but ICE decided that she was trying to immigrate here, and that she was going to come here and try to stay here.
But she had a travel visa.
But she had everything that she needed. So what they did was they detained her, and then her family now is really concerned because if she gets deported back to Iran, and they say she got deported because she was trying to sneak out of your country, she's then going to get in trouble in Iran. So they're freaking out now at this point. So ICE basically gives them the option. They say, you're either going to get deported back to where they were going to send her to where's this?
Tehran?
No, they were going to send her back to
Tacoma?
No, trying to KLM. Shoot, I'm just completely drawing a blank right now. Place where pot fucking Amsterdam.
Oh.
They were going to send her back through
Okay.
Amsterdam. And she might have had a chance of trying to claim asylum in Amsterdam. But instead they sent her to Tacoma. So it was basically, hey, jail here or jail there. And this poor woman, she was just coming here to visit her family, to visit her niece and her nephew. She's 29 years old. And I
Wow.
mean, yeah, so you can imagine, I don't know, a lot of people, I've traveled a lot of places around the world, and I've been in certain situations where I'm still a young dude. I'm only 30 right now, but I used to travel back when I was in my teens, back when I was in my early 20s, and I would have these situations where I was terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen, and she lived that where she's in a foreign country, these people in uniform
Right.
grab her, put her in handcuffs, detain her in a room,
Wow.
all of a sudden send her through, an hour-long drive through the gorge in a rainstorm, lock her up in a jail. Like, it must have been terrifying. And now she's in a holding facility up in Tacoma where right now there are immigrants who are conducting a hunger strike because of the conditions there, because of the slave labor basically that's happening, where they force them to work long hours, grueling jobs, terrible conditions at the facility. And there's a hunger strike going on there right now, and she's in that facility. So this young woman, this architect who is here to visit her niece and nephew,
A
this
professional
professional
woman.
is now,
Not that makes her any more important than another person, or
Yeah.
woman or child. But I mean, when you're a professional, you're more apt to travel.
yes.
First of all, right? I mean, just because you have the means and the money, and your job may take you out of the
yeah.
country.
It was insane. And so what we did that night was we heard about this happening through the ACLU, and so we put out a call. A few people showed up, and a really strong crew of folks went out to the Dalles actually with her. And the reason they did that, there wasn't enough folks who were out there that night. It was, side note, crazy actually, is that when the first ban happened and no one was being held at the airport, thousands of people showed up at the airport, if you recall, during the first travel
right.
ban. And this time we had a human being in our airport being detained illegally by ICE. And there was an awesome core of activists who showed up, but beyond activists, there wasn't really
wasn't
any,
a big
the
public
people
outcry,
didn't
particularly.
come out for the person who was there, and it baffled me. But this core of activists went out to the Dalles with her and made noise all night, and they wanted her to know that there was nowhere that they were going to take her where we didn't know where she was and where we weren't going to be fighting for. It was that she needed to know that people cared. We didn't want her to think that this is Trump's America, where people can do this to her and treat her like this, and no one cares. We cared, and we wanted her to know that we cared. And this awesome group went out there, spent the night, drove an hour in a rainstorm, back the next day. That was the day of Quanus Hayes' burial or public funeral. And they made it a few of them made it to that. I was baffled by these folks who would do
that's
this.
Dedication.
Yeah, like
That's
it
amazing.
was amazing. And then they showed up downtown during the Don't Shoot Portland rally that next day, and I was just like, man, these folks are freaking they're on it. They're fighting back. Like, they're doing what they can to make the difference that they can, and it was amazing.
They're not being paid to do this.
No, well,
these are not
beyond what George Soros is paying us.
Right. I mean, that amazing fallacy that there's a bunch of liberal money floating
that
around.
That bastard
to pay
forgot
for
about
guys.
me. He owes me some money. He needs to contact
any
me.
more than anybody was paying those Trump people to be out there. We know that nobody was paying those dumb shits from Trump to be out there either. It's stupid.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. No, those guys they're worshiping all on their own.
Oh yeah, it is. It's a worship. It's a kind of worship. Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Oh man. So there's issues here. People need to pay attention. If you haven't, I would visit your Facebook page.
Yeah, Direct Action Alliance.
Direct Action Alliance on Facebook. Check it out if you want to keep updated and you're interested in helping, because they're a great resource. You guys are really doing the work. It's amazing. And then there's some other issues, aren't there, going on?
Yes, there's a few. Just to touch back on the immigration one real quick, there's this issue that's been happening where dreamers have been arrested by ICE, folks who are supposed to be protected by DACA.
Right.
And we've also had a crazy amount of raids in the Portland area. And this place is supposed to be a sanctuary city. And in this sanctuary city, we're having families being torn apart by ICE, and the city isn't doing anything about it. We're having this woman being detained at our airport, and the city isn't doing anything about it.
I mean, to be an advocate of the city, what are they supposed to do against ICE?
Well, what the city can do.
What power do they have?
They have all kinds of power. They have the power to control the law enforcement in this state and to direct them to protect the residents of this state. The problem is that would directly, that they're not willing to take the chances for the human beings. If money was on the line, they'll step up, they'll do all these things, but not with human lives. These are...
Now, I know they won't. They definitely, one of the things that the cities, one of the pledges that they make that make them a sanctuary city. I lived in one, San Francisco, like the first.
Yeah.
Okay. But it wasn't that they were going to actively do anything against them, the customs patrol, but they weren't going to call them when they released somebody from jail.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to help them find or assist them in arresting.
Yes,
they definitely weren't going to intervene in an arrest that's
they're not
down.
Going to collaborate, but they are going to be complacent, which is in my view, that's completely unacceptable. I believe that all the residents of this state should be protected, and if there is a federal agency that is harassing citizens of the state, I believe that the state should shut those facilities down in the state and no longer allow them to be there. Of course, the implications of that are something that the state and the city are not willing to deal with, which is why they haven't taken those extreme measures. But I feel like those extreme measures are absolutely necessary when human lives are on the line, when families are being torn apart. For instance, when that young woman was detained and at PDX, where was the mayor? Why wasn't the mayor there demanding to know why she had been detained, asking for the whole story? Not a single one of the city representatives came or showed any interest. We didn't see anybody from the city or the mayor at anything having to, at Qantas's funeral. A 17-year-old.
What happened on the first big protest when everybody showed up and there were thousands of people at the airport? Were there any
when all those
representatives there then?
Yes, when all those news cameras were there, when Jeff Merkley showed up, of course Ted Wheeler was there. He was, Susan Bonamici was there. So, Ted Wheeler was right along there with him because he's got aspirations. He's trying to go places, and everybody knows that. And I think it's despicable that you would put, the risk of being too... I don't know why he's not doing this. Everyone says he's such a nice guy, and he seems like such a nice guy, but why isn't he at the funeral for a 17-year-old teenager who got killed by your employees?
Yeah.
Why aren't you there?
I would say that he probably, the way that, especially the way that he was elected,
Oh man.
I would say that would be, he claimed he was going to hold the police responsible. He could at least have shown,
Yeah, he could have shown up,
at the funeral. Yeah.
And if the family didn't want you there, if you're concerned that, people wouldn't want you there, if the family asks you to leave, then leave, but
right.
have the decency to show up and try. At least try.
Right.
And I'm so disappointed in the new administration. I'm beyond disappointed in it. But that's what we're doing as far as immigration goes. The other thing that we've been doing, like you mentioned earlier, is countering these Trump rallies. So just like Hitler, just like Mussolini, just like Franco, the fascists love rallies in their honor. So Donald Trump has called for people to rally, for him and support him. So these orange sheeple have answered their orange ferret king's call. He's given out the animal call, and they're all grouping together in huddled masses. It's bananas.
Oh, you do a disservice to ferrets by.
Oh my gosh!
That's
yeah,
not
no.
even...
Well, the family values, right?
Man, that's about it. The weasels.
Oh my goodness! But no, there have been a few rallies. The biggest one was in Lake Oswego, where about 200 Trumpettes showed up, and we countered them with about 500 to 600 folks in black and some in pink hats, and it was the coalition of people who didn't like Trump. So it's basically 70% of the city. The other 10% is complacent, and the other 20% didn't listen in school. Oh yeah, but no, it's been interesting. The one in Lake Oswego was really, it was beautiful to see. We just overwhelmed them completely, and then they held one down in Salem, and this how
did that go?
That one was I didn't make it down to that. It was my birthday weekend, and I was at the coast.
But some other folks did.
Yes, this awesome person Ashley, who's from Salem, Ashley Couch. She actually reached out to Direct Action Alliance and said that they wanted to do this in Salem, and they need help. So they kind of started a Direct Action Alliance chapter down in Salem, and they organized this with Mike's help, one of our members. I helped out here and there when I could, but it was mostly them, and they organized this resistance down there, and they showed up, and a couple protesters actually got hurt. They were attacked by one of them got hit in the back of the head, got stitches, ended up going to the hospital. Another one got knocked unconscious. So that one was kind of, they got really violent down there. And then they had another one up here in Vancouver, Washington, which I did go to. And that one, Black Bloc showed up really hard at that one because of what had happened in Salem. And basically what happened was there was about, I'd say 50 or 70 Trump, maybe 100 at peak moment, Trump supporters at this rally.
And you're outnumbered 5-1 or something?
Oh, no. That we were outnumbered there, but what happened was they had 3%ers, because of what had happened in Salem. I think it put off a lot of people, and they just, they're not willing to confront the hate in their neighborhoods when there's danger involved, which is, people can't be complacent when there's danger involved. That's when you need to show up, because the more people there are, the less likely dangerous things will happen. We went up there, and there was all kinds of crazy things that happened. First off, there was this big Black Bloc contingent that came down from Olympia, I believe it was, which was wonderful because we were there and there was about 50 of us. And then we hear this group of folks coming down, chanting anti-capitalista, anti-fascista, and we're just like, oh, that's awesome. And there's this group of 40 people just completely covered in black just march down here, and it's just this huge wall of black that basically surrounds the entrance area to the Trump rally. And the cops come through and confiscate all of our flags and let the Trump people keep their flags.
I saw that on the video.
Yes, and they said because ours might be weapons, but apparently theirs were not. So they confiscated all of the poles to all of the flags first off, and then we decided to start marching around, and then certain elements started throwing smoke bombs into the Trump rally, disrupting it. That was why they were there. They were there to shut down this rally, and that's we'd put together the event, and that's what we'd called for is to come up here and disrupt this fascist gathering, you know. And
smoke bombs. Did the police not like that much?
The police did not. 6 people ended up getting arrested. A few of them were from up in Washington. A couple of them were from down here in Portland. And that one was successfully disrupted. They were planning a march to go over to the freeway and wave their banners and their signs. The police ended up shutting that down because of the presence of Black Bloc. So we succeeded in shutting down their march. Same thing happened in Salem with all the violence. Their march.
What were the charges on the arrests for? Were they?
The arrests were for
too bad.
No, it was disorderly conduct. Mostly, resisting a peace officer.
There wasn't assault or anything.
No.
Even the guy who got stitches, was that?
What happened?
That was Salem.
Down in Salem, yeah. And no, he didn't get any charges on that. He was the one who was injured. There were charges filed against a couple activists since I've been here last, though. Some Don't Shoot Portland activists. Some ridiculous charges. Standard Schaefer got charged with robbery, I think, because he snatched some glasses off of a dude's face who was assaulting a woman who was standing in front of the Portland building, and they literally arrested him for robbery, I believe. And it was the most ridiculous thing, and then they decided not to press charges after they made the arrest. Well,
of course, it was just a reason to get him
exactly
out of there.
Well, it was a reason to. They came and picked him up from his local Starbucks a few days later, while what happened was he was filming a police officer at his Starbucks, and the police officer saw him and arrested him and used the robbery thing as it was a really weird situation. That's the kind of stuff. It's kind of like what happened.
That happens all the time when cops are being filmed and they take your camera and stuff. And
that's exactly what happened.
That happened, actually, believe this or not. This happened 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Southern Oregon. This is protest, buddy. In Southern Oregon, protesting the federal DEA raid on a medical marijuana garden that was huge. 300 plant garden. It was too big a garden. Yeah, it really was. Outdoors, it was enormous. It was like 2 acres.
Too big a garden.
Right. for that time, it was awfully large.
Oh god.
So we're out there protesting against it, and one of the sheriffs comes up, and my girlfriend at the time had her camera out.
Yeah.
Christy, she actually is the president of the paper.
Yeah.
Helped me with Oregon Campus Connection. So Christy's standing there filming the police, because there was a bunch of police in the highway and stuff, and we were filming the trucks that were coming out of this property, dump trucks loaded with weed.
Yeah.
Right? And
oh my god.
And the cop asked her if it recorded audio, and she laughed and said, well, of course, because it's a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
Of course it does. And he reached out and snatched it right out of her hand and said, you can't do that without asking my permission. And she said, what? That's not true. And he says, oh, it is too. And he walks back to his patrol car with it. And I told him, I'm on the phone to my attorney. And I did, in fact, call Paul Loney, attorney at law, up here in Portland.
Yeah.
Renowned, famous marijuana attorney. And I called Paul, and he came back on the phone with me right away. And he said, Keith, if this happened years ago, it was like 2008 or 9, I think, that it went to court in Oregon, and the Supreme Court, I think, of Oregon said, no, if you have a phone and you're recording a police officer, they know, first of all, they know they're being recorded, so that's telling them right there.
Yeah.
It's making it known. Yeah. And it's understood that a phone records audio.
Yeah.
So there's no need to ask about the audio. And basically that cop was completely out of line.
Yeah.
So about 30 minutes later, he returns her phone. after coming back. And I know he went and got on the phone to his boss and said, "Boss, can I take this phone?"
Yeah.
And I'm sure the boss called the DA.
Did
The
he
DA
delete
said,
anything?
"Hell no, you can't have her phone for filming you on a public street." And
oh my goodness.
And they gave the phone back, and we were livid at the time. She still has the video of him taking it from her, right?
Yeah.
He's like videotaping, is like takes it away. It was amazing. I need to get that old video back from and put that. It's scary, and it's still happening. It's still happening in some states, especially.
Yeah.
Oregon is a little more progressive than others. But,
no, it's crazy.
No good. So I'm glad you guys are showing up and doing that, man. And being that, and you said you started having some more not pro Trump, but some more of your own rallies that are not pro Trump, right? You're starting to have some more anti-Trump rallies.
Yeah, we actually today there was an anti-war rally.
Rally.
Yeah, which is it's a same thing with what we've heard today with Trump dropped the Moab in Afghanistan, and that
right after the bombing in Syria last week.
Yeah, so he's basically just trying to overcompensate for his tiny hands, and oh, look at me, I'm a big tough guy and I can drop the order. He's despicable. He's losing. He's showing off his he's basically risking human lives, and people are dying so that he can show off how much ordnance he has. It's
exactly right. No, it's like he's, like I said earlier, it's like, I got bigger balls than you. And what did he do? We were just talking about this. He does it while not the Moab, but the bombing of Syria. He does while the president of China is at his property. It's just insane. Yeah. And he didn't even have he didn't have the president up to the White House. Why?
No, the world, it's a bunch of madmen right now who are it's a bunch of madmen running the world, and it's really sad. Like, Xi Jinping of China is probably the most sane, most trustworthy major world leader right now.
Right?
He's I would trust him over Trump,
and
over
Angela Merkel
over Putin.
Is looking like an angel right now.
Oh, Angela Merkel looks like a saint, and she's the neoliberal God Queen right now, pretty much, and she looks like a saint because everyone around her is a freaking fascist.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, look at Le Pen in France.
Oh my goodness, what a disaster!
And supposedly being helped by the Russians.
Oh, just like, hey, that sounds familiar.
Does that sound familiar?
The Russians know how to...
The Russians are helping stand up autocratic people all over that are supporting these crazy...
When people don't want globalization, Russia can...
That's exactly right. When people all retract and are all protectionist and don't extend beyond their own borders, then Russia can just dominate the world. That's the whole point.
The stratagem is crazy. All of it is crazy. I believe that, the United States shouldn't be trying to dominate the world either. What we should be doing is exactly what Bernie Sanders was proposing when he was running for president, where our foreign policy, our globalization, isn't a militarized one. It's one that's, and it's not this bullshit trade deals. It's sharing technology. It's sharing what we know, the know-how that we have with the whole world, and helping them cultivate it so that they can take care of themselves the way that we can take care of our, and that's the right kind of globalization, where we work with every single country to make them the best that they can be, so that we can all succeed.
I can tell you right now, that is not what George Bush had in mind when he was talking about the 1,000 points of light back in 1988.
Oh my gosh!
I'm just saying, when George W. Bush,
throwback,
George Herbert Walker Bush, right? Bush 41.
HW, not just W.
Yeah, when he was talking about that, he was talking about global corporations, and people thought he was talking about volunteerism and shit like that. But what the New World Order that he had in mind was corporations are controlling the world. Yeah. They're international, over boundaries. Yeah. No problems.
There's 3 countries left on the entire planet that don't have a centralized bank, that aren't part of the centralized banks. Those countries are Iran, Syria, and North Korea. What? Those countries used to be Iraq back when Saddam was president.
Right, right.
It used to be Afghanistan back when the Taliban, all of these, it used to be. They're not anymore. They're all part of the centralized bank now, except for the ones that are evil, like Iran. Like Iran is the number one.
Well, it's because every nation in the world requires to borrow money at some point. In order to do that, you have to buy into the rest of the nations and that central bank bullshit.
Well, China's starting its own central bank to compete with the Western ones, and they're being a lot more generous with their terms. They're not going to make your whole country reliant on them in order to pay back. So that's why China right now is pretty much taking the
That's
lead.
why Trump is hating on it, but I hate to agree with Trump, but China does manipulate currency. Man.
They're developing the whole world right now. They're developing the continent of Africa, while the West has done nothing but take advantage of that continent. Right now, Chinese investment is building high-speed rails and building infrastructure and roads. They're rebuilding Indonesia.
But that's masking their industrial rape of the nation, though.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're throwing bones to the people to make it look like they're not, and at the same time, they're going to steal all their natural resources.
And they're treating them, and that's the terrible part, is they're treating them so much better than the West has. Because what the West did was go in there and empower these warlords to take over and basically oppress the entire country, while these warlords controlled what created the resources. And then these resources go towards the West, and they throw pennies to these warlords, and then the warlords suppress. Yeah. So what China is doing is actually really, to them, is like, hey, this is wonderful. When from the outside looking in, it's like what you're doing is terrible. But in fact, they're treating them so much better than the West was treating them. It's kind of like what happened with the Spanish and the Americans in the Philippines. The Spanish wouldn't even teach Filipinos how to speak Spanish. That when the Americans came in, committed genocide, took over the entire country, drove their leaders to exile. But then they started to teach them English. The Filipinos were like, oh, hey,
we like you guys.
You're so nice. You're teaching us English. It's this.
Right.
It's this. You treat someone slightly better than the person who was abusing them, and all of a sudden you're a savior, even though you're still. It's terrible, and that's exactly what's happening. But it's we as Westerners can't look in and criticize because we didn't. Well,
that's what the Russians have done for years, though. When they did that in Cuba, they did it. And now that they can offer a lot, but they could offer military assistance to these countries for cheap. They could offer technology to these companies at the time. They don't have technology anymore, other than hacking technology. But they can offer oil and natural resources, because they've got natural resources out the bazoo in Russia. Yeah, everything you can imagine, everything you can want, they've got.
Look at all that land.
I know. They've got it all, man. Okay, we could try to solve the world's problems. We're not going to do that. Yeah. I'm glad you stopped by again to talk about what's going on in Portland and Direct Action Alliance, what you guys are up to.
Yes.
We really appreciate your work here on Goddab Radio. And again, thanks for stopping in, buddy.
Yeah, and the next big thing is going to be May Day. May 1st.
May Day. May 1st, there's a rally.
Huge rally downtown.
Pioneer Square?
It's going to start actually at Director Park, which is 1 block up from Pioneer Square. Okay. If you go to Pioneer Square, you'll hear and see the crowd. It's going to be huge. And show up for May Day.
Director Park is where Occupy was?
No, it's the new park, the one that's right behind the Fox Tower.
Okay.
So it's literally, that Nordstrom that's right west.
But if you go to Pioneer Square, you'll be able to find it.
Yeah, you'll be able to find it.
And Direct Action Alliance, if you find them on Facebook, again.
Yes, you'll see a link to all of that.
You're going to find all this information.
Yeah, we're on the May Day Coalition this year, and it's going to be huge. So
excellent. All right, Jacob Bueros.
Yes, Bureros.
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 God damn it.
God damn it. Okay, man. Thanks for stopping by, Jake.
Yeah,
we'll have him on again soon and catch everybody up. So thanks, everybody, for listening to Goddab Radio. And catch us on LinkedIn. Not LinkedIn. Listen to me. Catch us on iTunes. You can catch us on iTunes. You can catch us on www.goddabradio.com, of course. And then most of the places you find podcasts, you can catch our show. So tune in again next week, and we're going to have more good stuff, more carnival barks, of course. and more debunking that we do every week on the show. So, again, another shout out to Jacob for stopping by with us this evening. And tune in next week, folks, and we'll see you then, or at least we'll hear you.
Hear you.